Awesome. All right, so welcome everyone. Where we're going to be picking up today is at the very bottom paragraph of page 68. Now about sex. And if you're like, oh no, why do we have to look at that? Why do we have to talk about that? Well, here's the thing. If you go to a meeting and you guys are reading out of the book, and then we get to this part of the book, and then there's a little bit of an awkward pause and somebody will read it, and then there will be some stifled giggles. That's why. That's why, because it's uncomfortable. Because that's where I tend to hold the greatest shame or the deepest secrets. And it's truly the things that I don't want to look at are the things that need God's light the most. And I'm going to kick this off with really a stupid joke. But I'm sure you all have heard the story of the confused sponsee. So you'll notice if you haven't, I'm telling you it, so I apologize in advance if you have. You'll notice that most of the directions for what to do in regards to sex conduct are found on page 69. And that's one of those like, ah, ha, ha, ha. But I always like to tell the story of the confused sponsee. And so there's this sponsee that does this thing that I'm sure none of your sponsees have ever done, or no one here has ever done, which is get into a relationship in early recovery, where the sponsee is their hearts are fluttering, their coffee's a quaking, and they tell you, man, the blue of his eyes matches the blue of his grippy socks. It's meant to be, like it is, woo. And so the sponsor, being the responsible sponsor, says, okay, buddy, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go and have a look at the directions on what to do in regards to sex and relationships. It'll be found on page 69. Now, the good sponsee is dutiful, that wants to do this stuff, wants to follow the directions. So the good sponsee goes home, is on their way home. 69, I can remember that. 69, 69. Starts driving, got to pick up some milk from the store, picks it up, goes home. All right, what page was I supposed to read about relationships and what to do about relationships and early recovery? Page 96. That's it. That's the page. So if you want to just real quick indulge me, pop over to page 96. So the confused sponsee with the best motives, the best intentions is reading this. All right, what do I do about romantic relationships? All right. Do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. That sounds fair. Good to keep a positive attitude about these things. Search out another alcoholic and try again. I don't know. They say the odds are good, but the goods are odd. You know that saying. And it says, you are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you offer. Now, let me tell you that sort of like encapsulated my dating life for many a year. But that is also why I do a lot of hand holding with my sponsees. I'm not going to necessarily go read that page. We're going to read it together so they don't get confused. But I think that's funny. And thank you all for indulging us. So let's pop over where we're supposed to be, bottom of 68. Now about sex. It goes on to say, many of us needed an overhauling there. So, like a complete remodeling of this. And it says many of us. So, one of the things that's important for me to understand is that if I'm seeing myself in this book, I am not alone. Man, when they were trying to put this thing together, they were scrimping, they were saving, they were trying to sell shares of Works Publishing so they could get enough money together. They weren't going to be wasting time on things that didn't apply to most of us. So if we're here today and we're like, man, I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to look at this. This is an area of my life where I have guilt and shame. Yes, that's most of us. And if you're here today and you're like, this area needs an overhauling, yeah, you're not alone. That's why we're going to have a look at it. So it goes on to say, but above all, so more important than anything else, we tried to be sensible on this question. When we talk about sensible, I'll describe what sensible looks like for me. And it's going to talk about how sensible is not always a simple thing to find. I'm trying to find what I like to call that God-centered path, where God would have me be, higher power creator, spirit of the universe would have me be in this area of my life. It says it's so easy to get way off the track. So if you think about like horses, like in a race, like off the track, they're no longer in the race, they're in the woods, like that sort of thing. It's so easy to get way off the track. And welcome those that just joined. We're at the very bottom of page 68. Here we find human opinions running to extremes, absurd extremes perhaps. One set of voices cry that sex is a lust of our lower nature, a base necessity of procreation. And so if you're like, okay, what does that mean? So that is the group that says sex is bad. It's bad. Bad, bad, bad. Yeah, it's like that plain bowl of rice. Yeah, it's bad. Not that rice is bad. We don't have an opinion on that. But it's that idea that sex, bad. You better lie back and think about, I think you're supposed to think about baseball, but I don't know if they saw some of those baseball players. They're little cutie patooties. You can't be doing that. But that it is bad, shameful, do not enjoy it, yuck, yuck, yuck. So that's one extreme. No, 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 no. And here's the other extreme. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage. Yeah, Lynn's got it. It's like the spicy, like, ooh, we're gonna get hot. Like, and so who bewails, like, oh, you don't need marriage. That's gross. That's yuck. And it says, who think most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They see its significance everywhere. They think that we don't have enough of it or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. And so that is the, straight pepper diet. Yeah. Yeah, that's not a logo that I designed, but I did design one for that. Love it. So that's that idea where it's like it's either nope, no sex, no relationship, nope, 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 or all of it. Just get it out of your system. Do as much of it with as many people as you can. Get it out of your system. And so what we see is two extremes. And we see that they're not quite right sized. So it goes on to say one school would allow man no flavor for his fare, so pretty bland there, and the other would have us all on a straight pepper diet, and that's what Howard's shirt says. Woo! And here, this is what I love. It says we want to stay out of this controversy. We're not trying to pick a side. And I just want to emphasize something. This is a book that was written in 1937, 1938, published in 1939. I might show up to this book with some preconceived notions and ideas about what it is going to tell me about sex. But it's actually incredibly like freeing and God-centered and like really not shaming like one might expect. So it goes on to say, we do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. And that is to say, judge. I'm not here to be the judge, jury, and executioner. And it goes on to say, we all have sex problems. All have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. Not hardly be an alcoholic, not hardly be whatever brings you to this all-inclusive study. Welcome, we're on the very top of page 69. No, we'd hardly be human if we didn't. And so this is an area of life that is not limited to alcoholics, or struggles that are not limited to alcoholics. But again, when you're working with others and you're receiving their fifth step, or you're sharing your fifth step, and we think about those deep, dark secrets that we don't want to tell another human being, not all of them, but almost all of them fall right into this area. This is where we tend to hold the most shame and the most guilt. And this is where we experience that I'm getting blocked from a power. This is also the area where we have the greatest ability to cause harm to other people. So this is why we have to have a look at it. And so it says, what can we do about them? So we all have problems, whether we're a little straight pepper diet or we're a little no flavor for our fare. We all struggle in this area. You are not alone. And we have a way to build, to grow, and to develop a same sound sex ideal. And for me, that is one of the main points and one of the main purposes of what we're doing in sex inventory. So, pew pew, over to you, Terry.
Thanks, Paige. I mean, yeah, how do you deal with guilt, shame, and remorse? I mean, you stop doing the behavior. Uh, I don't know that I am doing the behavior. That's why we have to look at this. And if you look at sex, it's just look at your conduct in relationships, your behaviors in relationships. And we're looking at how we act out on our selfishness, act out on our inconsideration, act out in our dishonesty. You guys, I don't know, you guys heard me say this before. I'll say it again. I mean, an insane person gets put into an insane asylum because they act insane, right? Does that make sense? Or am I talking Chinese? Yeah, that makes sense. They get let go from that insane asylum because they act sane. So we're looking at our actions and our conduct in relationships. And they give us a spectrum here in the first paragraph. Paige did a great job describing that. And think about just being on the highway. You see Joshua Happy, he's driving right now. I don't know what the speed limit is. Tom also, I don't know the speed limit. He's in Australia. They're using kilometers. I haven't got I'm working on my Fahrenheit to Celsius, but I can't figure out the kilometer shit yet. But long story short, say I'm on the highway, right? And the speed limit is 60, and Josh is driving on the highway hypothetically, and say the speed limit's 60, right? And driving at 120 miles per hour, that's dangerous. That's an extreme, right? Just like we talked about, we're going crazy about sex and we're a mad dog for sex and stuff like that. But then there's also another extreme, driving too slow on the highway. Say someone else is doing 20 miles per hour on a 60-mile-per-hour speed limit. That's also dangerous as well. What we're looking for is a happy and sound medium and ideal. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're going to strive for. And I don't understand what's wrong with me because I can't see it. I'm just blind to it. That's why we need to write it down. So what do we do about them? And here's what we do about them. Here's the instructions on how to write out the 9 questions for your conduct in relationships or in your sexual life or whatever. I kind of wish Bill put this in bullet point, right? Because I need it. I'm not very good at following directions. I'll give you an example of how we're actually not really good at driving or following directions. Who's got a pen and paper on them? Anyone got a pen and paper on them? Josie? All right, Josie. I want you to do this. Draw a line in the middle of your page, just a blank page. Put a dot in that middle of the piece of paper. And then what I want you to do is write a perpendicular line to your right from that starting point of the dot. And at the end of that, write a perpendicular uh, line to your right again. And at the end of that, I want you to write a 45-degree angle to your right. And at the end of that line, write another perpendicular line to your right. What do you got? You see, I can't see it. Close. So if I have a perpendicular right, another perpendicular to my right, and a 45-degree angle to my right, and another 45-degree angle to my right, I will have a house. What did you write? A couple of triangles on a line, right? So you understand that we're pretty not really good at following directions, especially if they're verbal, especially if they're verbal. So I kind of wish Bill actually wrote them in bullet point, but that's why if you are very novice with the big book, it's good to find someone who is armed with the facts about themselves, and also who has a working knowledge of the big book, who could be your big book tour guide. And there's a lot of them on here. Howard, Josh, Tom's another one, David's another one. Just gravitate towards these people. They'll show you how to use the instructions in the book, and that's what I'll do with you with this paragraph. There's a lot of meat and juice in this paragraph. It says we reviewed our conduct over the past years. So Paige, what's the definition of conduct? 1930s definition? I don't know that. Sounds like behavior, right? Yeah. She's fun at parties. She brings out that book all the time, right? So where have I been selfish? That's a question for us. So the first of the nine questions. And I think the key word is where. Where? Where was I selfish? It's not a bullet point question. It's not me saying, yes, I was selfish with this individual. I'm going to say, where was I selfish with this individual? The second question would be, where was I dishonest with this individual? Now, there's three forms of dishonesty. There's just an outright lie. There's also, lie by omission, like telling partial truth. And then there's a straight up lie that's by delusion, right? Just buying a lie because you believe it's true. Then here's a new word for us. It's in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I think is probably the most important one, is the word, where was I inconsiderate? And that's the big word that we're going to be looking at. We are looking at our patterns of inconsideration. And you think about it, like, yeah, our life was terrible at the end, right? Anyone remember the last few days of drinking and drugging? Yeah, it sucked, right? Can't stop drinking, suicidal, in a hospital bed, can't stay stopped. You're too scared to leave the damn rehab because you're going to think about using when you get out. You hate your life and dot, dot, dot. But we don't consider what other people around us are feeling at that time. I don't consider the amount of pain and turmoil that I put other people through because of my conduct, right? Because of how I act out in my selfishness. See, that's something that's new that we need to be awake to. And this is the process that does that. So usually I have one person who I put down on this paper. Usually I do it on a piece of paper. I put one person, how long have I known them? And I say, where have I been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate in those amount of years? And then things will just flow right out of me. And then here's a big question, which is another question that's setting us up for our 8 step list, which is, whom had we hurt? Who was attached to this individual that I hurt? There's a ripple effect that happens with us. Not only do I thoughtlessly hurt someone else or inconvenience to someone else, not only do I hurt them, I hurt the people that are attached to them as well. There's a blast radius, right? So if, say, I hurt David, right? I stole from David. I put him through mental anxiety about trying to pay rent because I took his money. That's the actual harm. It's not me just stealing from him. It's the mental anxiety that I put him through because he can't pay rent because I stole money from him. Now, who's also affected because I took that money and he's going through that state of mental anxiety? His girlfriend, probably. She's getting the brunt force of that crap, right? She's getting that fierce anxiety and fear. David's pacing back and forth. He's ignoring her. Now they're fighting every single night, right? And then who also affected because of that? Maybe his mom, his dad, his sister, his brother, and then her girlfriend's brought mom and sister. It's a blast race. It's a ripple effect, right? Yes, we are creating an 8 step list here, right? And it really is all about our inconsideration as well. And I don't see that. I don't see how I hurt people because I'm so consumed with myself. And here's our fifth question. Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy? That's one. The next question is, where did I unjustifiably arouse suspicion? And the next one after that is, where did I unjustifiably arouse bitterness? That's the first 7 questions. And here's the eighth question. Where were we at fault? Which is a combination of the first 7 questions in a nutshell. And what we're looking at is how we are acting out on our selfishness, dishonesty, and inconsideration in relationships, our conduct in relationships. Look, I had someone ask me, Terry, who's the most important relationship in your life? And I had the audacity to say, hey, God is the most is essential fact of my life. God is the most important relationship in my life. And this person's like, oh, really? Have you ever used the 9 questions that are on page 69 to see where your relationship is with God? And I'm like, oh, shit. I didn't know. You know what I found out? I found out I was a really crappy friend. I found out it was really a really bad friend with God. Yeah, I was bad. I mean, I spent 5 minutes with him. I mean, I've used this you could see it includes sex, so you could use your sexual relationships, blah blah blah. But I like to use every relationship that's in my life. My mom, my dad, my brother, um, girlfriends, teachers, co-workers, my son. I actually thought about doing this the other day. We're doing it with my son, and looking at all this conduct and my conduct in these relationships and where my selfishness is acting out. And because a culmination of that shit, I found out the other day when I did this that when I text someone, I don't say hi, how are you? I, I'm like, hey, what time are we meeting tonight? I'm like, hey, how's your day going? Like, how's everything with you? I learned that through using the conduct inventory, using the 9 questions. See, I didn't understand any of this because I was operating up here in my mind and just being driven and acting out on my selfishness. It's just years of my old personality doing its thing, concrete and pavement, being a scumbag, you know. And I didn't understand that I was pissing people off or stepping on their toes. I didn't understand that there was a ripple effect to that. So you have the 8 questions, but here is the most important question of them all is number 9, right? What does it say? What should I have done instead? Now I think this was the first time I ever looked at this. Um, this changed my life. I've done so many different ways to go through the steps, and I found out the easiest way to go through the steps is actually use the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to go through the steps. I just need someone to help me who could pull these instructions and show me how to use them, right? And I used that question to look at my previous 8 that I answered, and I looked at the opposites of that. So what's the opposite of being selfish? Unselfish. What's the opposite of being dishonest? Honest. What's the opposite of texting people without saying hi, how are you? Text people saying hi, how are you? You're creating a sane and sound ideal, that happy medium on that highway, that speed limit, right? And I want to grow towards this, which is the perfection of which is God, right? And I can't, and it says we got this all down on paper and we looked at it. I'm gonna look at this stuff and we're going to ask in the in the next paragraph, do I want to grow towards this? Because if our conduct continues, we're sure to drink again. Like we really are. Like, look, I'm not the arbiters of anyone's sex conduct. I'm not going to tell someone don't be in a relationship for a year. Which is kind of funny. I listened to Joe and Charlie a few years back. They had a good joke. They said, have all the sex you want in the first year. Just go at it, whatever you want to do. People, non-people, have sex, whatever you want to do. In the second year, you can have sex with other people. All right. Here's my recommendation for sex because it takes people out. Uh, I have friends who are no longer here. They're 6 feet under because of sex. Here is my recommendation. This is my opinion. Take it or leave it. Put a pause on a relationship. Put a pause on it while we build a relationship with a power greater than yourself through this process, right? Because then you could acclimate God into every aspect of your life, including sex. And then you'll see that your relationships change because you're asking God to be part of you in these relationships. Here's the other part. Do whatever the fuck you want. Go at it. Have fun. Go continue with your conduct, right? Be a knucklehead. Sometimes that's an experience you have to learn. I can't teach that to you. I can't teach you pain and humiliation and suffering from your conduct in order for you to learn from it, from your mistakes, which are just invitations to lessons learned. Look, you are supposed to have that experience in order to learn from it. I've had positive feedback from both suggestions, right? I've had one person not just do it once, not just do it twice, 3 or 4, 6 times until he got it. It made sense. I can't do this sex stuff and I gotta calm it down, or I'm gonna surely drink again, or I'm surely gonna have a tough life. And he learned from that and he has changed because of that. So that's my recommendation towards that. And back to you, Paige. Pew, 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 pew.
Pew, pew, pew. All right. So first and foremost, I've looked up conduct, and so there's conduct, and then there's conduct, and so the definition includes conduct and conduct. Bear with me with that, because it starts with to guide, to direct, to manage, behave. But then it says personal behavior. And that's the definition that is applicable to us, our behavior. And actually, as Terry was talking about his sort of recommendations, I always like to make the joke, the suggestion of wait for a year before you get into a relationship. Or there was a movie with Sandra, I think it was Sandra Bullock, where it's like 28 days later, but that might be the zombie one. I don't know. You can tell my limited. Like there's some, and so don't watch the zombie one and try to get relation or do you. I'm not the arbiter. You can get relationship advice from zombie movies. You do you. But in it, it's like don't get into a relationship for a year, or you get a house plant for 1 year, then you get a dog, and if by the end of 2 years they're still alive, you can never like all of that. Well, here's the problem with those. Now, I'm a little tongue in cheek with this. Here's the problem with those: is we don't know if those actually work. Nobody's ever done it, you know, right? We don't know. And I'll tell you, when I'm working with my sponsees, here's what I say: is I reference that 1 year, and I'm like, oh, those are mean. I don't say this at all, but those are mean sponsors. I'm a nice sponsor. Nobody who's ever been sponsored by me thinks that. They're like, you're mean. You make me write inventory, and make me do events I don't want to do. And you're so big on meditation. You smell bad and you suck, Paige. Uh, but it's it's that idea that like I won't make you wait a whole year before getting into a relationship. Here's what I'll suggest though. Doesn't it make sense to at least get to this
Yeah.
part of the work? To write inventory on our past relationships, to see these patterns of behavior, and to develop and mold a sane, sound sex ideal. And then and then, doesn't it maybe make sense? Like a solitary self appraisal is a little insufficient. So, wouldn't it make sense to at least practice sharing that with somebody in a fifth step, right? And then, like, I don't know about you, like, doesn't it make sense to at least get free from some of the defects of character that we've seen? So, I maybe should do my 5, 6, 7 and wait until then. And maybe it makes sense that I don't get into a new relationship until I've repaired the harms that I've caused in my other ones. And, you know, where I should maybe get some practice before I get into a romantic relationship. And maybe a good place to start, a good place to practice is with God. And why don't I practice building that relationship with God in step 11, and practicing my building my relationship with others in step 10, and in step 12 then I practice that. All of that to say is, why don't you work a set of steps first? And if you know me, that doesn't have to take long, so you don't gotta wait a year. That's just, and here's the thing: doesn't matter what I tell them, they're not gonna listen. They're
Well,
just, it doesn't matter what advice I give. Nobody, it doesn't matter if I tell them, I pour my heart out with my experience. Doesn't matter if I lecture. Doesn't matter if I nag. Doesn't matter if I threaten. Doesn't matter if I put it comically. No one's going to listen. They're just going to do what they're going to do.
mhm.
That's my experience. Now,
It's funny, Paige. I mean, sometimes these opinions could kill people, and almost killed me. I had
mm,
someone literally say, "Don't be in a relationship for a year." You know what I thought about? Being in a relationship,
mm,
and it was on my mind all the freaking time. I'm married.
mm-hmm.
I have a wife. But that's all I'm hearing. Like, so I love it. I love the way that you explained it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, all right, everyone, nobody think of an elephant. Don't do it. Don't think of elephants. Stop it. Stop it right now. I see what's
Yeah.
happening. No, don't think of elephants. Oh, I am difficult at best. All right. Now I love how you broke down those 9 questions. I put them just same things, just a little bit different visually. So same, different. But here's what so whom and I hurt, I put in column 1, name, flip the page, name, flip the page. And here's my experience as well. I will I will work with people and they will argue, and I love that it's like, okay, where had we been selfish? Like we're starting with that as it's listed, and then in the next paragraph it says we subjected each relationship to this test. Was it selfish or not? So they'll be like, but what if it's we're both selfish? What if we were all selfish? Well, then it was selfish. Write it down. Write it down. And then for me, columns 2 and 3, I love to work them together. Where was I at fault? And if I have written on past relationships and my resentments, a lot of what I wrote in that fourth column can fit in here. And as Terry was saying, it's not was I selfish, was I dishonest, was I inconsiderate. It is where was I selfish, where was I dishonest, where was I inconsiderate. Now, when we talk about creating that jealousy, unjustifiably arousing, so unfairly creating, I can create that jealousy, that suspicion, and bitterness in a number of people. I can create it in myself. And here's how. Well, if I'm hopping from relationship to relationship and I'm going from Mr. Grippy Sock to Mr. Grippy Sock, well, Mr. Grippy Sock is not in a position to be in a relationship. And I'm choosing to be in a relationship with unhealed people. And as a result, I'm like, what are they doing? What are they up to? You know? The other thing is if I am in a relationship or pursuing a relationship with somebody who is already in a relationship or I'm in a relationship, that will create jealousy or suspicion or bitterness in those other people. Now, the question then is, but what if they didn't know? Well, if they were to find out based on the actions that I did take, would that create these things? And so I always want to go through the lens of like before, during, and after the relationship. So we can look at dishonest as in those dishonest motives. That selfishness could be me thinking of just, I need to get into a relationship so I don't have to sit and feel my, like, be with me, you know? So I get out of self. And we can look at even after, before, during, and after. And I won't go too far into it, but I did just like I did with the resentments fourth column, just like I did with fears column 3 and 4. I've helped some people with sex inventory, and what I did was I wrote out some examples of what sex inventory could look like. So examples of column 2, column 3, column 4, like what we could, to answers to these questions. What are we looking for? And so for me, I then pull that prayer from the next paragraph. We ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. And just as Terry was talking about, we flip it. I want to look at what should I have done instead. And so I'll share with you some examples. Just as Terry was talking about, if I was selfish, I should be selfless. Well, another one is that like I'm sure I'm the only one here that has dabbled a time or two in codependency. I know, just me. I'm the only one. Well, how do I flip codependency? Well, I've got to be God dependent. The opposite of codependency is God dependency. And how do I get there? Well, I actively apply the 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. A lot of the dishonesty that I can have, like if I was unfaithful in a relationship, what's the opposite? Faithful. If I was somebody that was, again, I know that nobody here would do this, hopping into relationships too quickly, and you know the joke about what's the alcoholic? How do you tell an alcoholic's on a second date? If they got their 2 garbage bags full of stuff from treatment in the driveway, honey, I'm moving in. And then same joke for a drug addict. It's just 1 garbage bag full of stuff. That's the difference.
Don't
You know,
don't forget the U-Haul too.
yeah, the U-Haul is for those that have got the high bottoms. They got a whole U-Haul in the driveway. But for most of us, it's the 2 garbage bags. I don't even got my own bag. It's a garbage bag. Uh, and so if I hop from relationship to relationship and a result I move too quickly and I'm not able to be aware of and respond to red flags, what does that mean? Well, then I need to take time in between relationships. It means that I need to use discernment. I need to be somebody that is aware of red flags. You see, if all I'm wearing is rose-colored glasses because I need you to fix me, then those flags just look like flags, baby. I can't tell that it's red. I can't see that I'm at the carnival, like the misery and suffering of this next relationship. He'll fix me and I'll fix him. And actually, so I need to be able to do that. And a lot of what that looks like is that we build love, trust, connection, and communication over time. I treat communication as a practice. I treat vulnerability as a practice. And for those of you that are in relationships, something like cultivating, now this might blow your mind, various forms of intimacy. There's more than just one. The one where you're supposed to think about baseball or whatever. There are emotional intimacy, not just physical intimacy, spiritual intimacy, mental intimacy, those sorts of things. And if I, like, for example, ending relationships, I'm a natural ghoster. Like, that is what I would like to do. Goodbye. You've never seen me again. That's not cool. Not supposed to be Casper up here. That hurts people. And so I need to end relationships. I need to be active in my communication before, during, and after. And some of us, I mean, no one here would ever have these things that I like to call tendrils. You know, when you're broken up, but the little creeper. Hey, what are you up to? Hey, I was thinking about you. Hey, like that. Just pull them back in. So I've got to cut those tendrils, right? And that fourth column, what it is to build about and create and to develop, is my sane, sound sex ideal. That's the point. There's a beautiful flow to this thing. And sometimes when it's like, oh, your sex ideal, it's just got to be something really simple. And what I will say is that there are people where sex is especially troublesome. And it needs to be things like no sex outside of a relationship, or it needs to be for them no pornography, or no sex work. It needs to be, because it's so out of the realm of like it's causing so much harm to their lives that that's what they need, and that's okay. But if all my sex ideal is don't have sex unless I'm in a relationship, but how do I get into a relationship? And then what happens when I'm in a relationship? You know what I mean? If it doesn't grow. So bear with me about this. This is going to sound weird, but it's me. And probably not the weirdest thing I've said today. So it is, I treat the sex ideal a little like a resume. Don't put it on your Tinder profile. That's not what I mean by that, bad boy. But you know how your resume is meant to be a living document. It's meant to grow and to change. And it's just like that with the sex ideal. It's meant to change. As the sex ideal, there will be elements that we are going to have when we're single. There's going to be, and those elements are going to continue through when we're in a relationship, when we're married, when we have kids, when we're retired together, sitting on the beach or whatever. There will be certain threads, but hopefully we're living up to some of those things, and we're deepening that experience. So for me, that ideal is meant to change and grow. And so how does it do that? Well, I continue to take inventory. Oh, Paige, come on. I got to keep doing this thing. Well, I do have it in a good authority. It behooves me to write inventory. But yes, it's meant to grow. And so let's get into that next paragraph, because that's really what we're talking about here. So, oh, actually, before I do that, one thing I wanted to say really quickly, which is, it's me, so that's probably a lie. One thing that I wanted to say in a roundabout tangential sort of way is, okay, who needs to be on my sex inventory? So obviously relationships. You do not get to group husbands. Don't be like husbands as a group. No, separate them. So relationships, one night stands. And here's what I'll say. For years, I was like, no, don't group. Well, they group it anyway, so whatever. I stopped trying to die on that hill. So people that I slept with for drugs, people that I slept with for money, people that I slept with for approval, people that I slept with just so I didn't feel so alone, right? And if these areas of our life are troublesome, we could have a look at how we engage in sex work, or with sex work. We can look at how we engage with things like pornography, and it's not to take it's automatically bad and you're bad, but there are people who find this area troublesome. So let's have a look. And here's the thing, if we don't want to put it down, that's probably something we should put down. And that just holds true for kind of anything in this sort of spiritual realm. It's like, I want to have a look at it. Great. I think that's what we need to laser beam focus on. Sorry to ruin your day and point that out. But what is not going on my sex inventory is childhood sexual abuse. If I was the victim of an assault, that sort of thing, that goes in resentments. Now, what I will say is the only exception to that, and just bear with me because it's a little heavy, is if we were assaulted while we were in a relationship. And why it's helpful to look at that is because if you're like me, you stayed. And it is not that I did anything to make that happen. We're not condoning abuse, but I need to look at why am I staying in those situations? Because that is a pattern that I fall into. So that would be my only sort of caveat of exception. But yeah, by and large, where we've been the victim of sexual abuse, that's only in resentments. So it goes on to say, in this way, we tried to shape a sane, sound ideal for our future sex life. So that's what we're trying to do with this inventory process. We subjected each relation to this test. Here's the test, and it's a real good test, not just for relationships, but it's a test for almost anything in my life. Was it selfish or not? And I will now go on another tangent. Shock. You know how in the room sometimes we talk a whole lot about motives? Oh, we want to talk all about our motives, especially when it comes to making amends. I gotta check my motives. Weird, it didn't say to do that when we go to amends. I gotta check my motives before sponsoring or doing service work. It didn't tell me to do that. But here's where it's telling me before I do things, hey, is it selfish? Now that is one of the places where we love motives, but right, I don't want to look at those motives, not those ones. Yuck! No, thank you. So maybe that's not your experience. You guys love checking your motives as it comes to romantic relationships. Oh, it's just a wonderful Friday activity having a look at am I being selfish or not? All right. So it says we asked. And anytime in this book it uses we ask, that is a prayer. So it says, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. So before I do write on how I format it, the fourth column, what should I have done instead? I like to use that prayer. God, please mold, and I say please because I'm Canadian. God, please mold my ideals and help me to live up to them. And there's something about that prayer. That prayer is pointing to that idea that there is no power in an ideal. Bill's still here. Great. Bill will point this out to you. You know, there is no power in an ideal. That's not where the power is. The power is in God. So if I have an ideal and all I do is I go put it on the shelf, there is no change. Nothing happens. So what do I encourage my sponsees to do? What do I do? Well, we take that ideal to prayer. God, I pray that I would be fully dependent upon you. I pray that I would seek from you my sense of value, worth, love, attention, and affection, and I will channel that to everyone around me, my partner. I pray that I would be honest, especially when it's hard. I pray that I would be thoughtful, kind, considerate. I pray that I would be love, trust, connection, communication over time. I ask that you would make me who you would have me be in this relationship, that I would treat them as your child. Things like that we take to prayer on a daily basis, we can take to meditation. There is no power in the words on the page, but when they come alive in my life because of the power beyond the name or the word, God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, I will change. And so that is what I recommend. And I do this. It's one of those things. I do this so sponsees will use it, and then they don't, because that's how this works. Is when I receive their fifth steps, I write what I hear them say their defects of character are, and I write what I hear them say their sex ideal is from the fourth column. And then what I do is I ask them to type it out as a prayer, because I used to do that work on my own, and I'm like, now they can do a little bit more work. I ask them to type it out as a prayer and then send it to me, and I make it a pretty little thing. If they like flowers, I make it with flowers. If they like the color green, it's going to be green. Like, I do that in the hopes that they will use it and pray with it and meditate with it and move with that. And they don't really, but but you can't say I didn't try. so so we ask God to mold our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers, and all I'm saying is, if you need a name for your sobriety band, welcome to the stage, Sex Powers. So, it's available. It's an available name. We remembered always that our sex powers were God given and therefore good. neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor despised and loathed. And I love that because this is what I'm talking about when I say this is a book that was published in the 1930s. And I might expect it to be like, only if you're married and you better not like it. Uh, and that's not what it's saying. It's saying that this is a God given area of our life. And we're not meant to feel that shame and that black sludge. But we're also not meant to be frivolous with it. Terry was emphasizing, and I love that, in consideration. I need to be considerate with this area of my life. That's what I'm saying. So it's neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor despised and loathed. And that is the God centered path. All right, over to you for the next paragraph. Pew pew.
Thanks, babe. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. A couple things. Good question to see, was this relationship selfish or not? I like to say, what were my intentions on getting into this relationship? Well, what were the intentions on getting into this relationship with my wife? Well, I wanted a big spoon in bed. I wanted to be held, all the time. I wanted love and affection. I wanted someone to take care of me. Was that selfish or not? Yeah, it was absolutely selfish. So you can look at each relationship and put it to the test. What were my intentions on getting into this relationship? Also learned this from Marty C, where we ask God to help us mold our ideals and help us live up to them. I put a note card in my wallet with my sane and sound ideal. Today I'm working with two, balance and what was the other one? Listening. You know, I'm a terrible listener and I'm terrible with balance. Those are my two bugaboos that I found out from the last time I wrote out inventory. Why did I have issues with balance? Because I was so enthused with doing AA. That's all I thought about was AA and AA and AA, and then I would forget about my family, my job, and stuff like that. And there was no balance, and no wonder why I was having issues with relationships outside of AA. And then the other one was being a listener, really focusing on what people are saying, being considerate of what they're saying. And if I ask God to help me mold towards that, I will change. God will change me if I'm willing to have it, if I want it to be, right? And it says, whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow towards it. We must be willing to make amends. Oh, shit. Amends where we've done harm. Oh, we talked about this. We are creating an 8-step list with our 4-step, right? We're taking this step and we're going to be acclimating it to the rest of the steps. You're going to see another part of that too. So we do not bring still more harm in doing so. In other words, this is one of my favorite lines of the book. In other words, we treat sex or relationships as we would any other problem. This is a direct link to step 9. This is also a direct link to the third part of the 12 step of Alcoholics Anonymous, demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. So I'm going to ask God to help me mold and change, be mold and help me live up to this ideal, not just in AA, but also at home, at work, and in every single one of my affairs. Right? You're going to notice that this is a trend when we start reading the chapter Two Wives, Family Afterwards, Two Employers, and the Vision for You. And in meditation, hold on, time out. I thought we have to wait to step 11 to go to meditation. No, no, you could, it talks about meditation in the 4-step. What is meditation? Meditation is focused thinking. If you know how to worry, you know how to meditate. So when you worry, you focus your thinking on the problem. I mean, who's a good listener to their worries and fears? Me. Ah, I love focusing my thinking on that. But when you do meditation, you focus your thinking on the solution and on God's word. And here's another prayer. We talked about prayers and becoming the prayer, right? When you take a drink, you become the drink. When you do a sincere prayer, you become a prayer. You become a demonstration of prayer. We ask God what we should do about each specific matter. There's 2 prayers on this page. And here's where we acclimate these prayers into our daily way of life. Way of life. I was listening to Howard talking about the 4th dimension on page 25 yesterday. By the way, Howard, you kicked ass on that job. You did a kick-ass job on that page, right? A way of life, right? Mind, body, spirit, all interlocked together. And the result of that is the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension is me using these prayers as a way of life. So acclimate them to your life. Say these prayers in the morning. Say them three, David. Say these prayers 3 times a day, David. In the morning, at night, and all throughout the freaking day. That means all the freaking time, right? These prayers are positional. They get you back into the moment, right here, right now. That's where it's God. That's God's country. That's how we change. So we ask God what we should do about each specific answers. The right answer will come if I'm open to it, honestly. You know, like if do I truly want to, I don't know how to handle my situation with we're going to California. Anyone in California, I'm coming out there. Josh, I know them. I'm coming to San Diego. Not next week, the week after. So I'll be there. I'm definitely meeting up with you, buddy, right? And I'm flying with my autistic son, right? I've been on 2 planes with him already. Now he's 4 years old. He's a little rowdy. He likes to run now. He likes to run away from me. You know, he likes to scream as well and bite and scratch and all sorts of stuff. And I got tremendous amount of mental anxiety about that. This is a we treat sex like any other problem. So I'm going to ask God to help me in this specific moment. And you know what God said? Let it be. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean, God? What do you mean let it be? Just step off stage and let it unfold. So that's what I'm going to ask. And I'm going to ask God to help me be tolerant and be patient and be a listener when need to be a listener. Need to step up when I need to step up. I'm just gonna put this in God's hands. Paige does a great talk on the word on those 2 words, God's hand. Yeah, I've I've heard about you, Paige. We were talking. I was talking. Like I said, I was talking to David. How I was starstruck. How I was like, oh, so when I first saw you, I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I should call Paige. She's amazing. She's the best. I heard her on Mad Dogs all the time. And then I got to actually hang out with her. She's fucking awesome, dude. I caught her bird watching at a hotel one time in Toronto. I'm like, what is Paige doing? She's like, you're awesome, Paige. Thank you. And Paige is one of my heroes, and she's probably one of the best at breaking down this page and also the later chapters that I love talking about, which are the 2 wives, family afterwards, the 2 employers. Like those are my favorite chapters. This is a direct link to that. Look, the steps are all just a way of life. It's not like, yeah, I take the steps, I go through them once, I'm not, yeah, I'm golden. No, I gotta make them a way of life. And if you could see that this part of your, all we're doing is self-examination, but the whole point of it is to become self-aware of it in the future. Like it's going to happen that I'm gonna have selfish thoughts or I want to act out. That's why I need to have a relationship with the now, you know, using these prayers. Because then if I'm in the now, I'm gonna react differently to life. I'm going to react differently from the way I was because what's going to happen if I don't is my conduct will freaking continue and I am surely to drink again. This stuff is serious. We're not sugarcoating this. But if you try this out, if you, like you said, the right answer will come if I want it, if I want to change, if I want to stop, hypothetically, if you're a hound dog, if you want to stop being a hornball, if you want to stop, the right answers will come and you will have a transformation. You'll have a situation where, yeah, this is where I'm going to jump on it. And then you react differently because you're living in the moment and you want to change. That's been my experience with this. And I'm a married man. I never cheated on my wife physically with anyone. I have cheated on her with drugs and alcohol, but I've had thoughts about cheating. I've had thoughts about getting out, but I have not acted out because I'm living in the now. I'm living in the now. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be a tornado roaring through the lives of other people. I don't want to cause any more harm in the future. I'm going to make mistakes. That's natural. But if I become aware of this through this process, I'm most likely going to react differently the way that than my old personality would have reacted. Back to you, Paige. Pew, pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew. That was so nice. I'm like, why? I'm just a weirdo that likes birds. Uh, uh, who will sit in a like parking lot in front of a hotel and be like, "This is good bird watching." Woo! But you sharing about you sharing about having to get on the plane with your son and talking about how we say the prayer to become the prayer. It reminded me of this situation. I was I really enjoy airports, and but I think I was flying out of Pearson, which if anyone knows airports, you're like, girl, you flying out of Pearson. So that's the busiest airport in Canada. And I was flying out of there, and it was chaotic. It wasn't actually too bad, but I remember I was going through security, and there was this family, and they had two young girls, and they had this dog that was in a small carrier, and it was just like chaos, and I could see the chaos, and the dog was going and going, and it's a little dog, so it's a high pitch going and going and going, and I just in my heart I just felt this like love. And I wasn't able to do much in terms of practically helping, but I lean over and I talked to there was a mother and a father, and the father was there, and he was like scrambling trying to get everything, and I was like, hey, you're doing better than it feels like, and it's that, and I could watch him be like, like, oh, like, because that sucks. I like airports, but that is hard. And it's like when I become the prayer, when I focus on what I can give, I feel and I experience reality. Reality is that is abundant. God's love is abundant. But when I'm all stuck in me and what I think, I'm like, oh, what an inconvenience to me and my day, right? But and so it's like getting in connected to that, being the love, being that prayer. And I love that this little paragraph, as Terry was talking, it ties in to all these other steps. We see the direct connection to step 9, and all. It's interesting where I live in the world. Where I live in the world, there's a lot of like, it's the guys that are like, we don't make amends to our exes. And I'm like, but it says we must be willing to make amends unless it would cause harm. No, even to be graced with my presence would cause harm. And I remember at a meeting, I was one of the only two gals, and we were both recovered, and all the guys were like, no, we couldn't possibly to make amends to our exes. And the gals were like, it'd be fine. Uh, but I get it. I want that path of least resistance. Who wants to be like, hey, I was wrong, No. But also another little two little things real quick. One is when it talks about we treat sex as we would any other problem. This is how we deal with problems, with inventory, taking it to prayer, taking it to meditation. That's how we deal with our problems. And when it says the right answer will come if we want it. I've worked with people, and when we talk about step 6, that's what step six is. I want to be better. And better is maybe not the right, because we're not bad, but I want to be that person that God would have me be. I want to be free of these things. I want to do what God's will is. That's what step 6 is about. I can be terrified, but all that is asked of me is to be willing. So that takes us right to the hour. So sorry for nattering on and an opportunity to talk about birds. I'll take it. I'll stop the recording and join us next week as we will find who can judge our sex situation. Whew, it's God, it's not Paige. Alrighty.